Hello, and thank you for joining me to talk about our topic for this week, which is intentional listening. If you've been following along with the Ikigai Network, you will have seen that we've had daily posts all around this concept of listening intentionally. I have to say that I believe those posts that we've written that have come from some of the opportunities I've had to speak about this topic. Those posts are fairly shallow in comparison to the depth of the concept of intentional listening. But there's some key things that are very simple and easy to recognize and easy to remember. And I would like to talk about those in this very short video. Here's the bottom line. A life that has outcomes of delight and enjoyment and achievements, that is a life that is built on intentional listening. A life that is not built on intentional listening still has outcomes, still has joy-filled moments. It does, for sure, but it also has elements that come out of response and could have been avoided. And unfortunately, in our comfortable Western lifestyles, many of us live response to response. People say something or something happens and it becomes a reaction. We respond out of reaction, and therefore the results of that experience are limited, and sometimes, often, they can be harmful. It depends on your experiences, it depends on your mindset, all of that. But I can tell you that intentional listening makes a difference, makes a profound impact on the outcomes and the satisfaction and the joy of your life. Well, I know because I've worked with, I'm sure it's got to be in the thousands of people now. And when I have conversation with people, and I always have intentional conversation, it draws out the truth of what they know about themselves. And then people can make intentional decisions because, you know what? They just listen to themselves. So that's one of the first foundational things about listening to you, intentional listening. Listen to yourself. That's the most valuable, incredible thing that you can do, is listen to yourself. So how do you do that? You take time for quiet. You don't fill your brain to overflowing all the time. You don't have music and TVs and radio and be in busy spaces all the time, but you withdraw and you allow your mind the freedom to just think, what our brain does is when we use those mindfulness activities, it allows our brain to actually compartmentalize things. It allows our brain to go through the things that we've collected, file it in a drawer, or discard it altogether, or keep it in an area where we may want to think about it or work on it some more. So that concept of silence every day is really, really valuable. Not only does it help us to actually value what we've learned or experienced in the day, but it also produces incredible mental health. It allows our brains to thrive and prosper and not become overloaded, and overload leads to anxious and overwhelm. So, number one, listen to yourself. Take time to listen. I recently had a lady say this week she took on my challenge of writing every negative thought that she had, and the challenge was to go for 3 weeks. The idea being that you would write all of the negative things about that you think about, all the negative thoughts that you would have, and you write it for 3 weeks, and you see a pattern. And in that pattern, you discover that you have maybe 3 or 4, maybe even only 2 that are themes, and that every thought you think that is negative actually stems from these 2, 3, or 4 themes. It allows you to deal with the root of the problem, to change your mindset around those 2, 3, or 4 issues, and you actually relieve yourself of hundreds of negative thoughts. So this lady, she took the challenge and she wrote for a week, and after 1 week she was able to look at the piece of paper and say, what a load of rubbish. Why am I even allowing myself to think this? This is not true. I don't believe any of this. She tossed it out. she went on later in the conversation to talk about the peace that she had in her life. But do you see how one tiny step into intentional listening, 1 week of intentionally noticing the negative thoughts, brought about a radical difference for her life? I love that. When we're making job choices, when we're making decisions about our lives, when we're looking at our relationships, when we're trying to save money, when we're trying to improve our diet, all of these things can be made easier by intentionally listening to ourselves, listening to the things that we love, listening to the things that make us happy, listening to the things that make us unhappy, traumatized, negative, weary, listening to those things because they're wonderful signposts. Now, when it comes to listening to others, here's the only other main point I'd like to make in this small chat today. When we are actually programmed to listen to others by our culture, not by our design. With our design, every voice has value. We give value to ourselves, we give value to others. But in our culture, we have been programmed to listen to the voice of others, and in particular, the expectations of others. And so I always love to address this concept of expectations because it is so easy for us. And you would have seen posts in Ikigai this week that talk about how incredibly easy it is for us to listen to the expectations. And I always have one thing to say: stop listening to expectations. And in one of the posts, I say, stop listening to expectations. But yes, expectations do have to be dealt with. This is true. Expectations do have to be dealt with. We need to listen to them, as in, we need to acknowledge them, that they exist, that they have the power to influence our lives, and then we get to respond. If we don't listen and acknowledge that that expectation exists, we will not make a conscious choice for or against it. Now, some expectations we will want to value. For example, some of the things that I learned in my childhood, I want to value. In fact, I value them so much that I pass them on to my children. But not all of the things that I learned in my childhood I wanted to keep. Some of those things that I learned back then, I actually rejected as I got older in life. And I created my own individual culture. And I am encouraging my own children to do the same. I don't expect them to be a carbon copy of myself or what I expected them to be, but what I give them the freedom to do is to explore and discover, to find their own personal expression and develop their own personal expectations of themselves. So expectations of others, we're pre-programmed to listen to them, but what do we do with them? Many people just respond. Again, I had a lady here talking, and she was saying that she had actually not been aware that she'd been living out of the expectations of others for her whole life. And she is in her 50s. And she is not alone. Many people live that way, making decisions. Had a client earlier this week. She's young. She has a couple of small children herself. And when I listen to her talk, she's basically just regurgitating the beliefs that she learned from her formative years and her late teens and her early 20s, and she's just making decisions without even considering where the root of those decisions came from or what motivated those decisions. I remember that when I lived in Malaysia and my Chinese mother-in-law was living with us and I was pregnant, and her advice to me was, you cannot drink soft drink because soft drink will give you wind and it will make it painful. But you must eat 9 eggs per day because eggs are full of so many minerals and nutrients. And that was part of her system of a healthy pregnancy. And I was shocked. And I said to her, I am not Chinese and I will never be Chinese, but I do know how to listen to my body, and I will pay attention to listening to my body. And maybe back in the day, eggs were the most valuable source of protein and minerals that you could find. I really honor you for that. That's a great choice. But I have more choices. And if I eat 9 eggs per day, I could turn into a chicken. Like, this is insane. And I said that to make her laugh, and she did laugh because I didn't want to offend her by rejecting her expectations. But I took the weight, the value of the expectation. She wants me to eat well. She wants me to, she wants the baby to form well, and she wants me to not be in pain. And I remember when I said to my husband, just can you please sneak out and buy me some lemonade? Because actually I just need that. I just need to drink. It's so incredibly hot and I need a little bit of sugar intake, and I need a little bit of the energy that comes from drinking a carbonated drink. And I didn't do it very often, but I remember that she came home and she saw this lemonade in the fridge. She was not happy with me at all. So I could live with I could hear her expectation. I could take the value from the expectation, and then I would make my own choice based on my expectation. And this is what I believe that we should do in every area of our lives. When we're considering expectations from our families, from our children, from our spouses, from our workplace, from our social environment. And if we are hearing and recognizing the expectations, here's the other thing that will happen. We will identify whether we are in a place that is life-giving for us or not. For example, if you're in a social setting and the expectations that people have of you, you are listening and acknowledging those expectations, but you are rejecting most of the expectations, that means you're in the wrong place. Find a different social environment. Find a different people to hang around. And these are the kinds of things that we can teach our children. We don't have to say to our children, I don't like your friends. We have to say to our children, listen to your friends. Are they saying things that you value, or are you just following them to be like them because you want to be accepted in that social group? What other social groups are available? I learned this when my daughter was 8 years old, and so this was something, my eldest daughter was 8, and so this was something that we traveled through as a family through all of my children's years of school and even into uni, talking about friendships, how to form friendships, how to find friendships, how to listen to the expectations of our social group. And I find that many adults don't have that skill. Well, I hope that you've got something out of today's short video. I hope that this session has really been valuable for you in the area of intentional listening. There's way more to talk about this topic. I talk about this topic a lot in my program Toolkit, which is actually coming up. Will always be running. You'll always be able to find a date when a toolkit is running because it is my signature course. And I absolutely love it. How to live your life well with success and enjoyment. And listening to yourself is honestly one of the best foundational things you can build into your life. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for joining me. If you've got feedback, if you've got questions, put them in the comments. I will love to respond. I would love to help you if I can. See you next time.